Good afternoon. I'm Ramiero Salazar. I'm the director of the San Antonio Public Library. On behalf of the Library Board of Trustees and all the staff and our visitors of the San Antonio Public Library, I want to extend a very warm welcome. I have some signals that you cannot hear me. How is that? Is that better? Okay, good. Again, good afternoon. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Today is a very important day, a day that actually brought us not only this project, but quite a number of committed and dedicated folks to work on a project that we will describe to you in a few minutes. It's National Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's a day where we should remember all the victims and of course also the survivors of this tragic time in history. You will hear more about the Holocaust Learn and Remembrance photo exhibit in a few minutes from our presenters. But what I wanted to do is, one, extend a warm welcome and also acknowledge the various individuals and organizations that work very hard to bring this program together, this exhibit together. And so I would like to, at this time, acknowledge the sponsors and partners. I'll start with the Jewish Federation, Polanski and Beitel, James Lipton Foundation, Betty and Jack Wexler, Carmen and Stephen Goldberg, Jeff Berler, Mike Baucom, Judge Bonnie Reed and Stuart Schlossberg, Mr. and Mrs. Stanley Spiegel, Plains Capital Bank in honor of Joe Ziskin, Mr. and Mrs. Seedlig Frank, Sol Schwartz and Associates, Fulcrum Property Group, the Lynn and Samuel Stahl Family Fund, Texas A&M University, San Antonio, and the San Antonio Public Library Foundation. And we do have Tracy Bennett representing the Library Foundation. There's Tracy. Tracy's the president and CEO. And we also have Lacey Fisher, who is vice president for development. She also played an important role. I also want to acknowledge Jean Brady, chair of our Library Board of Trustees. Welcome, Jean. Then the next individual I'd like to recognize is Howie Nestel. And before I invite him to the podium, I want to tell you and share with you how this project all came together. I had visited the Mazal library about 4 years ago, and I was fortunate that I had an opportunity to meet Harry Mazal and learn about his efforts and about the library and the collections in that library. And it's very special. Howie would tell you more about it. Then I met Howie and we started talking about how special this library was, the Mazal, and how much it could contribute to, and was contributing to, bringing awareness about this tragic event in history and using that event to teach others tolerance, especially children. And Harry was very involved in reaching out and going out to schools and teaching the importance of tolerance and the importance of difference. And so Howie and I started really having a more serious conversation about how can we bring attention to this community. One, about the importance of this collection, that it's here in our own city. It's very special. And also the importance of teaching tolerance and talking about valuing differences. And so from that was the genesis for this project, this photo exhibit, and the various programs that we have had in the last 4 weeks throughout the library system. I'm very proud to have been part of that initiative. But like all great programs and great efforts, it was a collective effort. I identified some of the partners and sponsors that supported and assisted in this program, but there were other individuals. And one of those individuals is Howie Nestel. I'd like to invite him to the podium now.
Thank you, Ramiro. I can tell you that Ramiro and I have become better friends since we started working on this project. And I also want to thank a few of our special guests who are here. Christina Forsyth, who you'll hear from in a minute. She's the education director at the Holocaust Memorial Museum, which is located here in San Antonio at the Jewish Community Center. Ms. Rose Williams, who's going to be our keynote speaker. Judge Peter Sakai, who's going to tell you a very interesting story that you may not know about him and his family. And then I saw Dan Lipa from the Federation back there. Thank you for the support. The San Antonio Public Library Foundation. There's a lot of people who really helped out and contributed. I have some of my staff here, Scott Sagert and Hernan Lara, who are both here, actually shot these photographs from smaller photographs at the Mazal Holocaust Library. I mean, the Mazal Holocaust Library. And the Mazal Holocaust Library, as Ramiro mentioned, is a collection that's housed here in San Antonio, but you may not have heard about it because for 18 years, very few people heard about it because Aimee's dad, Harry Mazal, who passed away last year or 2 years ago, started this collection in his house. The collection grew to become the largest private collection of books and documents and photographs on the Holocaust in the world. The collection totals now about 20,000 books, 200,000 photographs, and about 500,000 documents, including transcripts from Nuremberg trials. One set of transcripts that I've seen there belonged to one of the prosecutors. And when I asked Harry once how many sets he thought of those existed, he thought maybe 5 sets existed in the world, and he has a complete set in his library. Why is this important? Why did we, Ramiro and I, and the Public Library Foundation and Aimee and all these other players come together to try to educate San Antonio about what took place as far as the Holocaust was concerned, but more importantly, what can we do today to keep the memory alive, to teach our children, and to hopefully preclude from this ever happening again? Well, that goes into a very difficult answer, but the reason why we did it was because in most cities across the United States, you find that there are small Holocaust Remembrance Days, primarily kept going by Jewish communities, and it's admirable to do that. But for a major city like San Antonio to actually take on this endeavor is probably groundbreaking, I would say, because I haven't heard of another citywide effort like the one that we did here in San Antonio that was kicked off 5 weeks ago by the mayor of San Antonio right here. It was all over the news, and then from there we went, not only kept this exhibit up, but we had programming at almost, there was something at every branch library. Some of them had more, and our speaker who you're here today actually went to some of the branch libraries, and those events were open to the public. We had set up for 20 or 30 people at each of the places, and in one case we had well over 100, another one I heard over 200 people attended. So we know it's important. We know that the memory hasn't been lost about what happened in the Holocaust. You'll hear something today that hopefully will help you get a better understanding once you meet somebody who actually went through it. The reason why Harry did all of this really was because of his care, because how much he cared about the truth, and it seems that over the past couple of decades, there's been a huge increase in Holocaust denial. So if you can believe that, probably the most well-documented historical event is probably one of the most disputed nowadays. You know that there are a lot of groups that say that it didn't happen to the degree that that we're talking about. So I want to tell you that Rose Williams is going to come and speak, but before I do, I want to tell you about a museum, or I'm going to invite Christina to come up here and tell you about a museum that's located here in San Antonio that tens of thousands of kids attend every single year, that go and see every single year from our school system, and I want her to tell you a little bit about it. It's called the Holocaust Memorial Museum, and it's located at the Jewish Community Center here in San Antonio. Christina, would you come up? Thank you.
Thank you, Howie. Hi. I'm very pleased to be here today and speaking with all of you. My name is Christina Forsyth. I'm the Education Director of the Holocaust Memorial Museum here in San Antonio. We are a program of the Jewish Federation of San Antonio, and we are located in what most people in San Antonio identify as the Jewish Community Center. It's actually known as the campus for the San Antonio Jewish community, and we are located on the upper level. I encourage all of you to come and visit the museum at some point in the very near future. And I also encourage you to, after you leave here today, to go and tell your friends and your family about your experience and about the fact that San Antonio has a museum. And I want to tell you a little bit about our mission and how we go about fulfilling it. The museum is dedicated to teaching the San Antonio community about the dangers of hatred and prejudice and apathy. Through our educational programming like tours, education trunks, and our exhibits, we honor the lives of the 6 million Jews and other innocent victims who perished during the Holocaust. But we also honor the inspirational legacy of those who survived. We are very honored and blessed to have several Holocaust survivors and second-generation family members share their testimony with our tour groups. The primary population that we serve are our youth, and each one of those groups that comes through, we tell them, you are our future. The lessons that you learn today, please carry with you. And Rose Williams, this wonderful blessing to the museum, helps to teach those lessons. She offers a message of strength and resiliency, and I consider it an honor to know her and plan to tell my children about her story. So I really want to encourage you all to visit the museum. Again, it's located at the Jewish Community Center at 12500 Northwest Military, and we're on the upper level. And I also want to thank Aimee, Mazal, Skillin, and Howie Nestel for having us here today.
Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Rose Williams, and before the Second World War, I lived in a city in Poland by the name of Radom. I had quite a large family, and we were a very happy family. Unfortunately, on September the 3rd, Germany invaded Poland, and our life changed forever. I had quite a large family. The immediate family was my father, my mother. Grandma came to live with us this year. She lost her husband to pneumonia. In those years, there was no medication like now. And so my grandpa passed away in 1938, and my father insisted Grandma come and live with us. Next, I had a brother that was 17 years old. I was 12 years old at the time. I had a sister 10 years old and a little brother 7 years old. Unfortunately, they're all deceased at this time. Within a very short time of being invaded by the Germans, Jewish life takes such a turn. Continuously they came out and with posters. The first on the agenda was no Jewish children could get a public education. All schooling was prohibited. Next they came out, you had to wear an armband with the Jewish star on your arm. To get some food was getting so difficult. You would have to get up at noon, around 12 o'clock at night, stay at the bakery. If you were lucky enough that nobody recognized you as being Jewish, you might be able to purchase a bread. But God forbid if somebody recognized you as being Jewish, they would pull you out from the line, beat you up, and even sometimes kill you. After a while, they start building the ghetto. Unfortunately, the street where we lived did not belong to the ghetto. And so they went to City Hall, got the names of all the Jewish people, and we received a letter after 1 hour we should leave our home. My God, can you think? What would you take first if you only had 1 hour to take? My mom, grandmother was so distraught, they didn't know where to start first. They tried putting on some dresses on us girls, 2 and 3 at a time. They'd start putting on some pants on the boy. But the beauty part about it was we had some wonderful, wonderful Gentile neighbors. And they came in asking my father what they could do to help us. They even offered to take us 4 children and hide us out till after the war. My dad sat down with us for a minute asking, would we like to stay with our neighbor? And from the little one to the oldest one, we all start crying. We didn't want to be separated from our families. Next, they came out with a poster that we had to radios. We had to take it to City Hall. Now that they have our names, they would come to our homes unexpectedly searching, and whatever they want, they help themselves to. If they found a radio, they either imprisoned you or beat you up so badly, or cut you even, or killed you. After that, after a short while, our ghetto was getting too crowded. People from around the provinces would come in. And so we got a new poster that they're gonna send some people out to some working camps. 2 of the people who were able to come back from the trains or the camp where they escaped, telling us there were no working camps. Those were liquidation camps. We were so gullible, we couldn't believe it. They were telling us that they would push some people into showers that looked like showers, but actually those were guests would come out, and once they were guests, they would put them into the ovens to burn. We couldn't believe that such atrocities are possible. How can you take a human being and burn? It was just unbelievable for us. But it was a fact. That's what actually was happening. While we were still on the way to the ghetto with our packages, we had no transportation. We had to walk on foot. After we all decided we didn't want to stay with our neighbor, and in such a mood, we walked into the ghetto. When we got into the ghetto, we didn't even have a room allotted. We finally found an empty basement. My God, it's after so many years, it's hard for me to describe those 1.5 days. No mattresses, straw on the floor, no water, no toilet, outside outhouses. We were sitting shivering for 1.5 days. That was handy enough, and he was able to find some brick and connect it to a chimney. After 1.5 days, Mom was able to finally cook some water and clean us and make something to eat. I hardly can believe, when I think back, a shiver still goes through my body thinking of that time. After that episode, we were told again that we were going to be sent out completely from Rodham. They're going to liquidate completely the ghetto. But while still in the ghetto, hunger and sickness was so rampant. the only way you could survive was to be able to go out from the camp and go on the outside to work for the Germans. My dad was able to get 2 permits, and in spite that we were still so young, I and my sister, we lied about our age, and we went to work. I was sent to a warehouse unloading some crates and asked the Germans if I could take home the wood, and they gave me permission. My little sister went to work at the hospital. There used to be Polish garrisons, and the Germans turned it into a hospital, and she was cleaning some barracks, asking if she could get some coals to take home. By us 2 working, we were able to have some food at the house. Also, our wonderful neighbors risked their life continuously, coming to the gates from the ghetto and bringing us some food. My dad got so scared, what if the Germans or the Polish police even would find him? They wouldn't ask them any questions, they would kill them. And so, in spite that we continuously begged them not to bring anything, they still kept on doing it. And so my father himself one night went out begging them, please, your help was so great, but we don't want to have on our conscience if something, God forbid, should happen to you. And so that help stopped. My dad was very, very religious, and he would get some people together every morning to a designated room, and they would pray. One time, going home from his prayers, he got caught by the Germans to go to work. Usually, they continuously came in asking for people to work. But in the beginning, people voluntarily went, wanting to go out and be able to bring home some food. But the Germans mistreated the people so badly that at the end, finally, people start hiding out and wouldn't want to go to work. They would come into the ghetto and go from home to home looking for people. And so one morning, they caught my dad. And when he came back, he told us what happened. He asked the Germans for some rags to clean some things. And instead, my dad had a small beard, and the German grabbed his beard as well with some meat from his chin, and blood would come out, and his shirt was full of blood, and the skin all dried up. We didn't know what happened, but word by mouth, we found out that he got caught to go to work. When he came back, finally, was staying, being so scared, not knowing what had happened to that. That's when he told us what happened, that he asked for some rags, and the German beat him up, something awful. After that episode, because of what happened, my brother and my father decided maybe they'd dig a hole deep enough in that cellar and hide out, and we would put a barrel of water over it so it wouldn't look like there's a hole behind it. It took quite some months, and we would carry out that dirt every night. After it was almost completed, a new poster was posted that we're gonna be sent out. The Russian was down to bomb pretty heavily, and that was already August the 6th, 1942. We were so undecided, what should we do? Should we all walk out that night, or should we leave our 2 loved ones behind? We finally decided, what if it was true? Because continuously they fed us so many lies that we didn't know what was true and what was a lie. And so we all decided we better all march out that night into a call roll of 5. I was standing with my grandmother, and my grandmother was holding my hand. when my grandmama looked over to the right and saw Germans pulling out children from mother's arms and mothers fighting with the Germans, not wanting to give up their children. And so they would kill the mother and grab the child and throw it on the cement. And my grandmother loosened my arm and start running, and I start running after her. Grandma, where you going? She said, don't you see, I want to pick up those children. And as young I was still, I said, Grandma, don't you realize what's going on? And try to grab her to pull back into the roll call. When I finally succeeded, a German noticed the commotion and come running over. What's going on here? I tried to grab his sleeve, say, nothing, sir, nothing, sir. But he turned his rifle around and with his body hit me really hard in the middle of my head. Blood came out. I fell. And the next thing I heard was a shot. And he had shot my grandmother. It took me many, many years to block out that vision of my grandmother laying at my feet and thinking how many people have stepped on the body of my grandmother. For many years, the director from the Holocaust survivors had asked me to become a speaker, and I could not do it. I continuously tried to block it out. One of my children became ill with leukemia, and he tried to tell me, Mom, please, write down your story and tell it to your children. I couldn't even then. Up to that point, I have never told my children or anyone of what I had gone through. It took me many years after I lost my son to be able to finally write down my story and to finally become a speaker, realizing I'm a dying out generation and my story needs to be told to the children. I've only been a speaker for the last 3 years. After that episode, I lost completely my family, not knowing if anyone of my family had survived. And that was August the 6th, 1942. I was sent to an ammunition factory still in Poland by the name of Pionki. Things were so difficult there. We were so hungry that we tried, while working in the ammunition factory, there was a lot of alcohol. And I'm sure you all know that in order to make a bomb, you need alcohol. And so we had 3 sentries to go through, and some of the people were able to bribe those sentries. And when they were on duty, we were all able to steal some alcohol. Usually word by mouth, we always found out if the inspection was due. But that night, I was on the 3 to 11 shift. Nobody told us anything. And as we went through the first sentry was fine, we went the second one was fine. When we got to the third one, 3 huge assessments were standing and with a whip beating us for no reason yet. But when the people realized, then start throwing the alcohol, and one of the oldest assessment noticing the alcohol, they really start whipping us and taking out every 11 person. We were 270 people that night, and they took out 27 people. Next morning, all those 27 people were hanged. Can you imagine? Maybe friends, maybe relatives, co-workers. We had to stay and look up. God forbid if we looked down and the German noticed, you would feel your whip on your back. You might not believe this, but you can survive hunger for a very, very long time, but almost impossible to survive without water. Our only friend that night was we could run into the woods and relieve ourselves and grab some snow to our parched lips. After 2 days of standing, we were finally told that the Russians are really bombarding heavily. We were going to be sent out, and we had to walk on foot to a railroad station for about 15 or maybe 18 miles, something like that. The lucky ones were the ones who were in the middle. The ones on this side continuously got beaten. And people, I'm imagining some might have tried to even escape, but I doubt it if they did, because of the Germans going around with the dogs, and if a dog grabbed you, he tore you apart. Our destination this time was Auschwitz. When we got there, we were told we have to leave everything behind. I didn't have very much. I had a change of clothing and some boots that our dad would always order every year for us. We had to have it made to measure, because it wasn't like here you can go in any department store and buy whatever you like. Everything had to be made to size. And so that would take us to a shoemaker and measure our feet and made those boots every year for us with warm lining in there because Poland was so cold. When we got to Auschwitz, the first thing they told us we had to leave everything behind. I didn't have but some pictures and the boots and some change of clothing, but all that was torn away from me. I didn't try to give away my boots, but some informers told them that whoever had boots had jewelry in their heels, which wasn't the fact with me, but in spite of it, they were taken away and were pushed into showers. We were so scared, we thought for sure gas would come out, but no water did come out. And when we came out, all women's hair was cut, and we were tattooed. I was bereaved of my name, and I was given a number, A15049, that I still carry on my arm. This was the name I had to answer to, and God forbid if I didn't hear it call. You can imagine the beating I would get from a couple who was just like us, but they were so mean that because of their meanness, their reward was to become a couple, and they were worse than actually the Germans. This is the number, the name that I had to carry on my arm, A15049, and I had to answer to that on every morning when we were called. After that episode, while still being in Auschwitz, those boots that were taken away, I was getting a pair of Hollandaise shoes. They were horrible. In the wintertime, the snow would stick to it. In the summertime, the mud would stick to it. Finally, every time I would have to stop and knock it off. And each time I would feel a whip on my back because I would fall behind the roll call. And so, on a weak moment, I took those boots, shoes, and threw them away. What a mistake. I took some rags and some paper and put around my feet. In no time, my feet got so ulcerated. Every few days, a doctor by the name of Mengele would come out and check our lines. The people he would feel that they're too weak to work, he would put to the left, and the people he felt they still can work, he would put to the right. In spite of it being in Auschwitz, we didn't get any work to do. The only thing they made us do is from one place to the other, carry some stones or stay in the coal roll. That was the job there. After he got to me, he was going with a long stick to the left, to the right. The left go to the crematorium, the right was still able to live. When it got to me, I had lost faith. I couldn't take it anymore. I was hurting, and I didn't think I had anyone alive. And so my hand was risen when he came with that stick to me, trying to push me to the right. I said, please, can I go to the left? He didn't look at my feet or my legs. He looked at my face, and with his stick, he said, you're still young, you still can live. And he grabbed my dress with his stick and pushed me over. After a few weeks, I found out that my little sister had survived, and she was already in the camp in Auschwitz. She had been in an agricultural field by the name of Suher. But how to get to her, I was so scared because we were counted every day, and the count was never the same due to the fact that people who were in the upper bunk beds maybe had died through the night or were sick to come down. And so usually we had to stay till the count was right. And so I didn't want to, when I finally found out where my sister's barrack was, I didn't want to deprive my barrack of missing a person. And I was able, word by mouth, finally, to get somebody to exchange. You can imagine, after thinking I was all alone and wanting really to go to the crematorium, to find out that I have my little sister. We were united on a lush, slushy night, raining. And my God, it's hard for me to describe the beauty of that night, to know that I finally am not alone, that I have my sister who might need me more. And so my whole attitude and my thinking changed, and hope regressed. And a little by a little, I start believing there has to be something more that rules with us, and there has to be a God. And I was thankful that I was still alive. And I prayed from then on that God should be good to us and we should be able to make it through. Hope came back slowly, but eventually it did. After that episode, after a short while, the Russians were really bombarding really heavily. And again, we were told we were going to be sent out from Auschwitz. And this time they were going to send us, it was the end of 43, the beginning of 1944. They sent us to Germany, to a camp by the name of Hindenburg. While we arrived there, they took us to a train. They gave us 2 pails to relieve ourselves, and they pushed in 80 to 90 people in a wagon that could have kept maybe 20. We were so tight in there, the person that tried to bend down was usually suffocated, not because we wanted to, but because we were so crowded in there. The smell alone could have killed you. The only lucky ones were the ones that were running first to the wagons and were able to stay by those little windows and pull up some snow. The ones in the middle didn't have a chance whatsoever. When we got to Hindenburg, when they opened those wagons, almost a fourth of the people were dead. While staying in line, the German asked who spoke German. And we were told we never should volunteer. But for some reason, my hand was risen. And he asked, do you speak German? And I said, jawohl. And I started thinking, oh my God, how could I have said such a horrible lie? I didn't know very much. I didn't know any German. But God was with me. We were an international group of people. And one of the ladies that was a German teacher, she came over to me saying, Rose, write down 10 words and memorize them. And in the morning, I will try and see if you know them. You might not believe it, at the speed that I have learned to have 100 words and start speaking. And meanwhile, every time he would ask me, I would just shake my hand and mumble something and put my head down, and I made it through for a few days. I learned German perfectly in such a short time that's almost unbelievable to believe it. After that, again, while working in the kitchen was like being in paradise after being so hungry for so many years. I tried to help the hospital. I tried to help my sister and some friends. What was the help? I would steal a potato, a turnip, or a carrot and hide it in the kettles and pick it up at night and then divide it after I picked it up. We know that to steal is a sin and we shouldn't do it. But when you're that hungry, you don't think what's right and what's wrong. And so I tried to help as much as I could. Usually people get jealous when they see that you have it better than they, and so somebody must have told my chef what I was doing. One night as I was picking up those packages, I felt somebody behind me. And I said, oh my gosh, I took a look and who was there? My chef, and here I was with all those packages in my hand. What you got there? And naturally I had to say food. Who gave it to you? And that was my mistake. I said, I should have told him the truth, but instead I said, sir, I was gonna ask you, but you already had left, and he knew he didn't. And I must admit that from all the Germans that I've met, he was treating us halfway decent. But that night, I don't know what was the reason, maybe because of my lying to him. He gave me such a beating. He busted my right eardrum. I couldn't get any medication in those times, and so after liberation, that was impossible to do anything. It became a chronic condition, and I lost completely hearing in my ear. After that episode, again we were told that the Russians are bombarding really heavily, and we were going to be sent out again. And this time it's almost impossible to describe our journey from Hindenburg to Bergen-Belsen on foot. We had to walk all the way, continuously being beaten, no food, no water. It's almost unbelievable. After so many years, I can't believe that I survived. The only reason I can attribute it because I was so young and dumb, not realizing and just following. After a short while, we were sent to this time to Bergen-Belsen. It's almost impossible to describe when we arrived at Bergen-Belsen. No matter where you look, left or right, all you could see is corpses. Water only 2 hours. Lice, mice, vermin, my God, it's almost impossible. Your body was all beaten up. After a short while, thank God, it was the end of 44, the beginning already of 1945, when one morning a big tank drove into our camp, claiming they are from General MacArthur's army, and they are English, they are our liberators, and start throwing care packages. What a mistake. Those care packages, whoever had grabbed, became sick of dysentery and typhus. I would say about 90% of the people who grabbed those packages did not survive the liberation. Immediately they told us they're going to burn down our camp. They will put DDT on us and send us in to the barracks where the German had escaped a few days before. After they dislodged us and shot us, gave us new clothes, and start doctors, interns, nurses from all over the world, as well as different organizations would come into the camp asking us where we would like to go. I myself and my sister, we didn't know what we want to do, but my sister was approached by a Jewish organization, the Hayas, if she would like to go to the United States with the children transport. She was at the time not quite 16 years. I was already 16 and a half, and so I could not go with her. When we were reunited, we had promised each other we're never going to be separated again. And so when her visa came in to go with the children transport to the United States of New York, she refused to go without me. And so we still stayed in spite of myself begging her to go. After a while we were still in Bergen-Belsen, word by mouth, we heard that our brother had survived Mauthausen. He was liberated by the Americans, and President Eisenhower was president at that time. He had emptied almost a half a town of Stuttgart and claimed all his cabinet to come and see the corpses from those camps. He said one day they're going to come and say that things did not happen, and I want everybody to record and take pictures. My brother was given a nice little home with someone, and when he heard word by mouth that we survived on foot, there were no trains, there were no gas to be had, and so on foot he walked all the way till he found us in Bergen-Belsen and decided we're all going back to the American zone because he already had a home. And so when my brother finally found us, we walked all back with him back to Stuttgart. And there, through a different organization, my sister was leaving for the United States of New York. I myself and my brother were registered with the American consulate. And when our visas came in, we had to go through a medical examination. They found out that my brother had TB, and they wouldn't allow him to come to the United States. And so I didn't want to go by myself, in spite that my brother kept on begging me to go because my sister was so young and might need me more than he did. But in spite of it, I didn't, because we both were marched to a hospital. I myself was not in very good health condition. I weighed 87 pounds, and I was really sick. And so my brother was sent to one hospital, I was sent to another one. And while my brother was in hospital, some scout for Israel tried to talk him in to go. He was unable to go yet, but after a few years being in Stuttgart in the hospital, he finally left me a note behind, and he took off. I had no other choice but then to register. I still had to wait almost 4 years till I was well enough and was weighing 100 pounds to be able to come to the United States through the Hayas. When I came, my destination was Seattle, Washington, through the organization, but my sister was at the pier in New York and took all the responsibilities, and so I remained with her. I hope what I went through never happens again. We had lost 6 million people, 1.5 million children, and 5 million of different denominations. Let's hope it never happens again. Thank you all so very, very much for coming, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Rose. Can I get you to light a candle, please? think I have a question session. No, thank you. Not right now.
That's what I've been meaning to say. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Sit and relax for 1 minute, and then we'll take questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I forgot that. I mentioned.
Thank you all. Ms. Williams, thank you very much. As I look around after listening to what you're saying and I look at these pictures, they take on a whole new meaning, more than just photographs. At this time, what I'd like to do is I'd like to call up Hazan Silverstein, who's the cantor at Agudas Achim. Hazan Lipton, there he is, sorry. There he is. And then right after that, I'm going to call up my friend Judge Peter Sakai to say a few words about civil liberties. Okay? So Hazan Lipton, Jeremy, thank you for coming.
Thank you. What an honor to be here, Rose. You are an absolute inspiration to all of us that bear witness to what you've been through and the transformation in all of our lives that's taken place as a result of your journey. I'm completely overwhelmed as one of the clergy of one of the congregations here in San Antonio. We mark Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day, each and every year. And to hear stories like this has the most unbelievable transformational effect. I chose today, in addition to a memorial prayer that we will share together, some poetry set to music that is reflective of the transformation that you witnessed, Rose. Chaim Nachman Bialik wrote in a reflection of Jewish life in a better time before the Holocaust, the poem Unter die Grünige Bäume, Under the Green Trees. And the poetry translates as follows. Under the little green trees, little moishelichs and schleumelichs play, fringed garments, coats, and earlocks, just like newly hatched young Jews. Bodies like straw, smoke, and feathers, they can be blown away like breezes. Little breezes catch them, and little birds disperse them. One thing they have, the only thing they have, is their little eyes. The eyes have two little pupils, which glow and shine, prophetically and wonderfully. Pensively, they contemplate the past and look at the birds. O Jewish children, what would I give for your pure little eyes? That poetry of hopefulness is transformed during the Holocaust and after the Holocaust with the following written by Yosef Papirnikov, Under the Little Green Polish Trees. Under the little green Polish trees growing, no more at play, little moishelach, schleimelach. No more at play, little sorelach, leelach. Not on the gentle grass, not when it's snowing. No more are young Jewish voices heard shouting, motelech, shimelech, rascals carousing. Battered and bruised with their woes so beguiling, strutting courageously, daring, delighting. The little green trees in Poland are mourning. Gone Jewish homes and their houses and dwellings. Gone are old alleys in shambles residing. Children like little mice scurrying, hiding. Dear little children with eyes large and staring, black with a dark devastation enfolding. Eyes full of fear, full of terror, conveying despair, disaster, beyond all comparing. Under the little green Polish trees growing, no more at play, little moishelach, schleimelach. No more at play, little sorelach, leelach. Not on the gentle grass, not when it's snowing. Und Die polnische Grinen Melech spielen sich mehr nicht kein Meuschelech Schleumelech. Spielen sich mehr nicht kein Zorlech Leelech, nicht auf kein Gräselech, nicht auf kein Schneelech. Es silchen schon mehr nicht die jüdische Stimmelech, von die Kundeis himlech, Motelech, Schimmelech. Mit die Zekrete, zerdrapete Zorelech, von dem Beiweisen von derem und Gworelech. Es treueren als in die polnische Beimelech, deut seine jüdische Heimen und Heimelech. Deut seinen Gesselech, chorev die Eiselech, wo es verstecken sich Kinder wie Meiselech. Jüdische Kinder mit großen Augen, schwarze als wie mit Chotschek verzeugen. Eigene volle mit Pachat verlaufene, unter dem Mondlicht dem bräunem Geträufene. Unter die polnische grüne Kebeimelech spielen sich mehr nicht kein Meuschelech, Schleumelech. Spielen sich mehr nicht kein Sorlech, Leelech, nicht auf kein Gräselech, nicht auf kein I'd like to ask you to rise for a memorial prayer. Exalted, compassionate, Creator of the world, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the souls of our brethren, men, women, and children of the house of Israel, who were slaughtered and suffocated and burned to ashes. May their memory endure, inspiring truth and loyalty in our lives. May their souls thus be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May they rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. El male rachamim, shochein b'amramim, ametzei menucha nichona, tachat kanfei hashechina, b'malut kedoshim utorim, kezohar arakim masirim, et nishmot kol acheinu b'nei Yisrael, anashim nashim v'tov, shenitbechu ושן ישרפו ושן יהרגו בגן עדן בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם אנא בעל הרחמים הסתירנה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור מצרור החיים הן נשמותיהם אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו לשלום המשכבותיהם ונאמר אמן. You may be seated.
Thank you, Cantor. Now I'd like to call up my friend Judge Peter Sakai for a few words. Usually I have to follow him, and so I know it's hard to follow these two acts, but Judge Sakai, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Howie, for giving me the opportunity to come speak. Thank you for putting me in this position of having to follow this. I am very overwhelmed and in awe of the solemnity and the dignity of this event today, a day of remembrance. I know some of y'all are going, what's Judge Sakai doing here? Yeah, I know, it's a Jewish event of significance, not a Japanese, but there is some parallelism, and Howie, I'm going to have to shift. After what's been done so far, let me shift a bit based on what I've heard. Obviously, Howie has asked me to speak on issues of civil liberties, and so he and I have shared the issue of my father being interned as a child during World War II, and the issue of civil liberties and the significance of that. But what I was really struck with Rose's story and was the fact that she, at such later date, decided it was important to share her story, to tell her story, and she's done that today with great dignity and great clarity. And I've been overwhelmed with that. And that was something that my father did for me. He didn't talk about his childhood. He was a typical child of the early 1900s through that Great Depression era. And so there wasn't much to talk about, and he wouldn't talk about it, but he did share his stories about the internment, and perhaps at another day, I'll be willing to extrapolate that out and kind of give his story of what happened when he was a child. But what I want to take away from today is how important, as a day of remembrance, and the stories we've gotten, the collection. And Ramiero, where's Ramiero? I know he's been in and out. I think it's important as a community that we recognize how important the San Antonio Library. Obviously, we have Christine here from the Jewish Community center, the Holocaust Museum. I've been to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. I've been a trustee with the Japanese American National Museum to see how important that libraries and museums bring, and then how important it is for individuals such as Rose and Harry, Aimee, your dad, who brought a collection to preserve this history so that we know where we've been and we know where we can't go. And so I hope that as a community we understand how important it is to invest in our libraries, how important it is to invest in our museums, how important it is to preserve our history in order that we know where we have to go. And it's important we had to recognize, and I've been given the opportunity to Howie Nestel, my good friend. It's kind of, we have a good and merciful God that allows us to connect paths, and our paths are connected, and my path through Howie has had me connect. And I've been one of the privileged few that also has been to the Mazal home to review the Mazal collection. And it's truly a treasure that needs to be kept and preserved. And I just hope as a community, with this day of remembrance and the significance and the stories that we've been shared with today, that we remember how invaluable it is, that we do have a investment to make. And I know that sometimes that gets caught up in our political debates and the politicians kind of debate it back and forth. But today is truly a special day, a day of remembrance, a day of significance that we should never, ever forget. And as Rose has done this, and hopefully she will continue, hopefully the good God will keep her going and sharing her story, it will be passed down for the next generations. And we have to keep these libraries and museums open so that our children can see, so that these tragic, tragic situations don't repeat themselves. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Judge. The last presenter I'll bring up, who will come up and say a few minutes, is Harry Mazal's daughter. She's the one that's tried to fill her dad's shoes, her and I and 50 other people, to try to continue this treasure that Judge spoke about, the Mazal Holocaust Library. This is Aimee Mazal Skillin.
Thank you, Howie. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Before I really get started, I want to take just a minute and let you guys know that, to me, there's somebody who's very special in this room today, amongst everybody else who participated in putting this exhibit together, and that's Scott. Scott works for Howie and spent enormous amounts of hours and time and dedication to putting this exhibit together, and I want everybody to know that if it weren't for Scott and Howie and his team, this really wouldn't have come together. So please join me in thanking Scott and everybody else. The other person I really want to acknowledge, who loves to be in the background a little bit more than everybody else, is my volunteer, Amber. She helped me choose these pictures. She helped us put them together, put them in order, write up all the little placards that go with each one. And so, Amber, you deserve really more recognition than almost anybody else in this room. So thank you. Thank you. Just quickly, and I know that they've already been mentioned, but I think it's worth mentioning again, but the mayor of San Antonio was very supportive of this event, along with my family, Ramiero Salazar, the San Antonio Public Library Foundation, in particular Lacey and Tracy, Howie, of course, your team, and it really took a village to put this together. So everyone had a big part in this major contribution, and I hope that it continues from this year forward, wherever we all might be, that we can come together once a year to do this again. So I want to tell you a little bit about the history of Yom HaShoah today. We've heard an amazing story from Rose and the Cantor who offered the prayer, And I think it's also worth mentioning how this all started, how it all began. So the full name of the day commemorating the victims is Yom HaShoah, which is literally translated as remembrance, or the day of the Holocaust and the heroism. It's marked on the 27th day of Nisan, a week after the end of Passover holiday and a week before Yom HaZikaron, pardon my bad pronunciation, the Memorial Day for Israel's fallen soldiers. It marks the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The date was selected in a resolution passed by Israel's parliament in Kisnet on April 12, 1951. Although the date was established by the Israeli government, it has become a day commemorated by Jewish communities and individuals worldwide. The day's official name, Holocaust and Heroism Remembrance Day, was made formal in a law enacted in August 19th of 1953. And on March 4th, 1959, the Knesset passed another law which determined that tribute to victims of the Holocaust and ghetto uprisings be public observances. In the early 1950s, Israel education about the Holocaust emphasized the suffering inflicted on millions of European Jews by the Nazis. Surveys conducted in the late 1950s indicated that young Israelis did not sympathize with the victims of the Holocaust, since they believed that European Jews were led like sheep for slaughter. The Israeli education curriculum began to shift the emphasis to documenting how Jews resisted their Nazi tormentors through passive resistance, retaining their human dignity in the most unbearable conditions, and by active resistance, fighting the Nazis in the ghettos and joining underground partisans who fought the Third Reich in its occupied countries. Since the early 1960s, the sound of a siren on Yom HaShoah stops traffic and pedestrians throughout the state of Israel for 2 minutes of silent devotion. The siren blows at sundown and once again at 11 a.m. on this date. All radio and television programs during this day are connected in one way or another with the Jewish destiny in World War II, including personal interviews with survivors. Even the musical programs are adapted to the atmosphere of Yom HaShoah. There is no public entertainment on Yom HaShoah, and theaters, cinemas, pubs, and all other public venues are closed throughout Israel. In the United States in 1979, the President's Commission on the Holocaust, established by President Jimmy Carter, commemorated Holocaust Remembrance Day in the U.S. Capitol with an unprecedented ceremony attended by the President, the Vice President, and many members of Congress. Since 1979, civic ceremonies have been held in Washington and in individual states and cities. While Yom HaShoah rituals are still in flux, there is no question that this day holds great meaning for Jews worldwide. The overwhelming theme that runs through all observances is the importance of remembering, recalling the victims of this catastrophe, and inspiring that such tragedy never happen again. The Shoah, or Holocaust, posed an enormous challenge to Judaism and raised many questions. Can one be a believing Jew after the Holocaust? Where was God? How can one have faith in humanity? Facing this recent event in history, does it really matter if one practices Judaism? Jewish theologians and laity have struggled with these questions for decades. The very fact that Jews still identify Jewishly, practice their religion, and have embraced the observance of Yom HaShoah answers some of the questions raised by the Holocaust. What a blessing that the San Antonio Public Library, the City of San Antonio, and the Mazal Holocaust Library were able to come together in a month-long event to honor and remember the victims of the Holocaust. We hope that this will continue as a tradition in San Antonio. In closing, I'd like to share a short story written by Barbara Sonic, titled simply Holocaust. We played, we laughed, we were loved. We were ripped from the arms of our parents and thrown into the fire. We were nothing more than children. We had a future. We were going to be lawyers and rabbis, wives, teachers, and mothers. We had dreams. Then we had no hope. We were taken away in the dead of night like cattle in cars, no air to breathe, smothering, crying, starving, dying, separated from the world to be no more. From the ashes, hear our plea. This atrocity to mankind cannot happen again. Remember us, for we were the children whose dreams and lives were stolen away. Thank you again for being here. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Aimee. Ramiro, will you come up, please? And this is Ramiro Salazar, the director of the San Antonio Public Library.
Thank you, Howie. I trust you have enjoyed today's program and that the message we delivered today, that of tolerance and remembrance, stay with you. In closing, I do want to acknowledge, again, members of the Planning Committee, Aimee and Howie, and our staff, the Library Foundation. Joe Banglin from our staff took the lead from the working with the staff committee. Joseph Marks, Caitlin Coward, were some of the staff members that really worked directly. In closing, we want to present members of the program with a memento, and I'll start with Rose Williams. Thank you so much for being part of the program and for sharing your very important story, very touching story. And, we are indebted to you for being here to share that story and that experience. Thank you so much for being here. Judge Peter Sakai, thank you so much for your support of the community and the library and for being here with us this afternoon. And to our Cantor, Mazzan, Jeremy Lipton, thank you so much for your contribution to this program. We have refreshments for you, so we invite you to partake of the refreshments. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon.
Thank you. Ms. Williams?
You're welcome to come up and ask questions. Everybody else is welcome to have this is our program. Okay. Everybody's welcome to have refreshments, and then if anybody would like to come ask Ms. Williams a question, she'll be happy to take a question. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all again.